So last week I made a video that detailed the 40k lore surrounding an Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum character named Lord Commander Solar Macharius. It hasn't proved to be a popular video, so I'm thinking of tweaking the format a bit and maybe re-releasing it at a point in the future. Regardless, in this video I'll be discussing Macharius' rules in previous editions of 40k and the associated model. So as Macharius was the greatest Imperial Guard commander to ever exist, I thought it would be interesting to compare his rules from more of a narrative perspective, just to see if they matched the lore. And, Macharius is one of the earliest characters of the Imperial Guard. He had rules in the second and third editions of the game, and in both of those editions, he's listed as the first special character, which is generally the slot for the most important character. So in the second edition codex, his stats are basically as follows: movement 4, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 6, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 4, initiative 6, attacks 4, and leadership 10. He's armed with a bolt pistol and chainsword, and of carapace armor, so he had a 4+ armor save. And among his special rules, he had a variety of leadership buffs that made him immune to kind of a lot of psychology and a project, he projected a leadership bubble to nearby units. He also had a rule called Hot-Headed that allowed him to kind of randomly increase the amount of attacks when he charged. So at this point in 40k, specific armies were given a strategy rating that would determine who went first among other variables. Imperial Guard are generally a strategy rating of 2 at the time. And in Macharius' case, his strategy rating was kind of randomly determined by rolling a dice, so it could be between 1 and 6. On average, a little more of a strategic edge than the typical Imperial Guard army, and potentially quite high if you get a 5 or 6. So you get all of those rules for 105 points. Now, I never played during second edition, so I don't know if that's particularly good or bad. I did, however, play in third edition, and there his point cost increased dramatically to 173 points, but of course you had to have your opponent's permission to use him as per the rules at the time. So in the third edition, his weapon skill was D3 plus 2. So between 3 and 5. He was ballistic skill 4, strength 3, toughness 3, 4 wounds, and initiative 4. And his attacks were D3 plus 1. So both the attacks and the weapon skill changes really reflect his kind of hot-headedness of the previous edition, and the fact that he had suffered kind of old war wounds as part of the lore. And he was also leadership 10. He had a 4+ save and a 3+ invulnerable save from his helm, which is, exceptionally good. He's armed with a bolt pistol and a master-crafted power weapon, his carapace armor, a trademark crimson cloak, which doesn't seem to have any rules. I don't know the purpose of that, and the helm of Macharius, which is what gives him his invulnerable save. So for special rules, he still projected this kind of leadership buff, and he was kind of a master strategist, and his ability, or that ability, allowed him to determine who started the game first, if the decision is normally randomly determined. That's a big deal in typical heavy ranged guard armies. Just the ability to always choose to go first. Nice. So you have this typical hybrid character that 40k likes to promote that is both decent at strategy, but also leads from the front, right? He's channeling kind of Julius Caesar and other, very hands-on type of leaders that were both strategically brilliant, but not afraid to dive right into the fore. So he had some interesting rules, but I doubt it was probably too effective. His stat lines are okay, and because of the randomization, some could be quite high, although not too reliable. Overall, he's physically a little less impressive than that of a typical space marine, which is kind of obviously the benchmark for how good the average human could be. there's nothing in the rules or lore about him being especially good in close combat or physically strong, so I think that's perfectly appropriate. Where he really could shine is in the tactical brilliance, as he was said in the lore to be the rival of Primarchs in that regard. Now, there are some interesting elements here, but it's not really apparent that he was that great in the game, and the element could certainly have been pushed further. First turn, that's pretty darn good, but I think it would be interesting if there were some larger strategic abilities related to a bigger campaign system, because that was really his element in the story. So the only model created to represent Macharius is this little guy, and at the time it wasn't too bad, but it certainly aged a great deal. He's typically distinguished, throughout the art as this kind of golden figure. The standard GW model is very much just painted in gold. I couldn't find a really good image of that. I guess he just liked the bling. So, overall, I think some mixed opinions about how good it really fits with the lore and the narrative. It's hard to make an average Joe human, in terms of his physical properties, really shine in the strategic brilliance, because you're the one playing the army, right? It's your strategic brilliance that really matters in the end, not one or two little special rules on the periphery. But they could maybe have ramped that up a little bit, tweaked it a little better. So in the final video of this series, there will be a deep dive on the inspiration behind Macharius. This will be a rather exhaustive analysis that is really tied to Alexander the Great. There's a lot to cover on that topic. I hope some people will enjoy that video. In so many ways, Macharius is basically entirely Alexander the Great, and perhaps that's the reason that the character never went forward into later editions of the game. It's worth noting that his place as the prime Imperial Guard character was replaced by the new Lord Creed, who had previously, I don't think, been in the game. But now that Creed's dead, we could certainly reflect on the fact that Imperial Guard characters have a rough life in Warhammer 40k. They don't tend to survive too long. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.